Recording in progress.
Good morning, honorable members and the staff. I take this opportunity to welcome all of you to the Portfolio Committee meeting of the International Relations and Cooperation. Today we are dealing with two items. Those items are the Auditor-General's report on the performance of both the department and the ARF, African Renaissance Fund. Then secondly, we will be dealing with the Audit and Risk Committee on the performance of the department and the ARF itself. So once more, I welcome all the honorable members on the platform. I don't see the minister or any of the deputy ministers on the platform. I can see that the DG is on the platform. Do we have any apologies, Lubabalo?
Thank you, Chair. We do not have any apologies, Chairperson. For this meeting, Chairperson, the minister and the deputies are normally excused, Chair, so that to give space for the independent structure, Chair, to express their views on the audit outcome. Thank you, Chair.
What difference does it make between the absence of the ministers and the DG and the other administrators in the department? The essence of what you are saying.
Chair, in the past parliaments, Chair, and over the years, Chair, there's always been a request from the Audit and Risk Committees that they would prefer to present.
Yes, item number 2. I mean item 1. I'm not talking about item 2.
Oh, Chair, no, I understand, Chair, but Chair, this is the practice that we've been embarking on, Chair, for the years, Chair. So the minister and the deputies will join the Portfolio Committee next week, Chair, when they are presenting the annual report, Chairperson.
No, you are talking about a different item agenda. I'm talking about item 1, where we are going to be dealing with the audit outcomes from the Auditor-General. I'm not talking about next week's meeting, about the annual reports and so on. But anyway, be that as it may, it means, according to Mr. Lubabalo, we don't have to have the minister and the deputies when we deal with audit outcomes in the presence of the Auditor-General. We don't have any apologies. Any other apologies?
No, Chairperson. No, Chairperson. No other apologies.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. One of the recommendations we'll make to the 7th Parliament is that we see, actually, it will be better if the audit outcomes are presented, engaged, discussed in the presence of the ministry, so that you don't have some people after the meeting going to do a briefing to the minister and the deputy ministers And it's possible that there may be misrepresentations of facts in those particular briefings. In the name of transparency and everything else that we have to do as Parliament, in my view, we will have to recommend to the 7th Parliament that when we discuss from the audit, so that the Auditor-General, I know the Auditor-General has discussed with the department and presented the audit outcomes to them throughout the audit, actually. Auditor-General does discuss ongoingly the audit process and content with the department. But I just think that for completeness of the picture and transparency, remember these meetings that we have with the department in the presence of the AG are also attended by any member of the public who wants to be part of the meeting and the media. So I think it will also be helpful just to educate our people. They must see how we engage with both the Auditor-General and the department in the presence of the Auditor-General, so that some issues, we can deal with them instantly between ourselves, the tripartite, the department, the AG, and the committee. But that's not for this meeting. I think we'll recommend that to the 7th administrations, so that future generations can ensure simultaneous synchronization of these particular matters, so that a minister or a deputy minister is able on the spot to respond to some of the issues, so that we don't have to wait for the annual performance report to discuss matters of audit. That's just my view. We will discuss it as a committee one day, and maybe the committee might feel that the status quo must be maintained. AG, representative, you are welcome to our meeting. We will allow you to do the presentation, after which members of the committee will interact with the presentation. As I said, the DG is also here, and also other members of DERCO. I see they are here on the platform, which is very good and must be welcomed and must be encouraged that it must happen going forward, to allow members of the executive on the political and administrative side to be part of these engagements, so that they can also hear how the AG's office presents the report that the AG will have also maybe presented to them at their level. I'll give over to whoever is now representing the Office of the Auditor-General of South Africa to do the presentation. My request is that in your presentation, you can leave out the mission, the vision, what you stand for, the mandate from your constitution, and go to the substance of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, the executive leadership team led by the DG from the department, the members of the Audit Committee, as well as my fellow AGSA colleagues that's on the call this morning with me. It is our honor to then present to you our BRRR feedback for you as the Portfolio Committee of the International Relations. As we then flight our slides, Chairperson, please allow me to introduce the team from the AGSA who's joining me on the call today. I have with me Ms. Nongpakamo Matanzima, our business unit leader, Ms. Marianne Whitford, the senior manager responsible for both DERCO as well as the African Renaissance Fund audit. And together with the managers, Mr. Sabua Mshlopi, as well as Onika Mshlango. Thank you. Now, Chairperson, I do recognize in terms of your opening remarks to me, you did indicate that you would prefer for us to get into the substance of the presentation. So I'm gonna just quickly focus in terms of slide 3, which is our accountability ecosystem, because this really unpacks in terms of why we are here today in terms of our strategic focus. So in terms of the accountability ecosystem, you would know that from our engagements in the prior year, we did highlight to you our new direction in terms of our culture shift strategy. And in terms of this graphic that you see on the screens, this forms a very important part of that strategy. It then indicates in terms of all of the key role players from the ecosystem, and each of these role players then have an important role to play to ensure that the environment at the department as well as the entity is sound from a control perspective, that there's proper oversight by the executive team. There is then the overall coordination support that's then provided by some of the coordinating departments that includes National Treasury, the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. And it also then includes then the national leadership, for instance, this very committee in terms of providing the support and oversight over the portfolio. Now, central to it all is us as the Auditor-General, and it's through our insights that we will share today that we aim to influence so that there is then action taken to ensure there is clean administration as well as service delivery in terms of an impact on citizens. Now, where there is issues identified that impact in terms of there being no consequence management for material matters, we then also then have our enforcement powers in terms of our act that then allows us to take further action to ensure that there's proper consequence management for failures to observe proper compliance. So with that, Chairperson, I'm going to go into the next slide, which is basically a recap in terms of the messages that we left with the committee last year, where our indication and our request was for there to be proper monitoring and regular follow-up with the portfolio and the executive authority in respect of the filling of critical positions, and we've specifically included the Chief Financial Officer position to ensure that there's stability in the leadership team. We also ask that there be close monitoring in terms of the action plans being implemented to ensure that there's an improvement in the outcomes. And we also ask for monitoring around the enforcement of a culture of consequence management within the portfolio. Now, in terms of our reflections, in terms of the work of the portfolio committee, in terms of those recommendations, we do commend the committee in terms of the oversight that has been exercised over the portfolio during the year. Some of the noted progress includes then the oversight visits to the missions abroad to follow up in terms of the matters that were reported by our team in the previous cycle, what has been done in respect of those matters, and then in respect of the specific 3 matters that we included as part of our recommendations, we do note that the position of the Chief Financial Officer was then filled subsequent to year end. It was with effect from the 1st of April. From an audit outcome perspective and an action plan, although the audit outcomes are the same as the prior year, we do now note in terms of DIRTCO that there has been substantial improvement in terms of the quality of the financial reporting, but I will talk to that as we get into the next slide. And from a consequence management process, we do note that there has been some progress made with regards to that. However, this still remains as an area of concern for us that requires then further action. We can then get into the slide that talks to the overall audit outcomes. And on here, you would note that there has been unchanged opinions or outcomes for the portfolio, with ARF maintaining their clean status and DIRCO remaining with an unqualified with findings opinion. Now, when we reflect in terms of the first year of administration, you would see that we do indicate on the blocks below that there has been an improvement. Back in 2019-20, we had ARF being clean, and we had DIRCO that sat with a qualified with findings position. Back then, DIRCO did struggle with a number of issues, including their asset management processes. So we are pleased to note that when we reflect in terms of from the first year of administration to where we are now, DIRCO has resolved the qualification issues. From a performance information perspective, we do note that although there have been no material findings reported, there were issues in terms of both DIRCO as well as ARF in terms of ensuring that credible performance reports are submitted. Both had material misstatements that was identified during the audit process, and these were then corrected. Now, from a strengthening of controls perspective, this is an area that does need further attention, but I will unpack that further in the presentation. When it comes to compliance in the portfolio, ARF has managed to get things right in terms of ensuring there's no material non-compliance within that space. That is definitely a best practice that can then be shared with DIRCO, who continues to struggle in respect of compliance within the procurement and contract management, expenditure management to the extent of irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure, consequence management. Now here I did indicate that although some work has gone in respect of consequence management, there is a substantial portion of the irregular and fruitless that has still not been investigated. And the very last compliance area that DIRCO continues to struggle with is around revenue management. And this is basically ensuring that there's proper systems and controls in place to ensure that all monies that are due to DIRCO is then timelessly collected. I will unpack this further as we go into the detail on the compliance areas. Now, looking at performance information, we do note, and I did mention that DIRCO
Comrade Chair.
Yes, who's saying, Comrade Chair?
It's me, it's Lekota.
In the Delgota.
I was just going to ask if there can be no way in which the speaker can guide us as she's talking to these pictures to indicate where she's at, so that we can follow closely what she's talking, at what point she's at in her delivery.
Okay, in the Delgota. We are now on page 6. Presenter, please, Mrs. Naka, every time you go to a page, just say we are now on page so-and-so. And the heading.
Thank you, Chair. I will do so. So
yes, that's kind of you.
Okay, so just to reflect in terms of the performance information, and I am on slide 6 as indicated by the Honorable Chairperson. The issue around the one target being materially misstated in DIRCO was a new issue that we picked up in the current year. And as indicated, that was then corrected, which then resulted in there being no further material misstatements there. Now, from the programs that were selected for audit, we did audit both Program 2, which is International Relations, as well as Program 3 in terms of international cooperation. And in respect of their overall achievements for these specific programs, they achieved 100% for Program 2, and 86% in respect of Program 3. Now, from an overall performance achievement, DIRCO achieved 96%. That is, they achieved 27 of 28 of the planned targets, which is a good achievement from a performance perspective. Now, over the next slide, on slide 7, in terms of the DIRCO's contribution in terms of MTSF, they contribute to priority 7. And linked to that is then their collaboration with other government departments, which includes the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, as well as state-owned entities. Now, a lot of the work that's then targeted for at a mission is to ensure that there's collaboration between our own government and the governments of the foreign countries. Now, when we look at DIRCO's core mandate, their mandate is around the execution of South Africa's foreign policies, as these efforts then contribute to both foreign investment as well as increased trade and growth in the tourism sector. Now, as part of our culture shift strategy, we go a lot deeper in terms of the strategic objectives as well as the indicators and targets to look at, with these strategic objectives, with the indicators and target, are these then driving an impact that would be seen and felt by the citizens of South Africa? Now, we have looked at DIRCO's indicators and targets, and we found to a large extent their indicators and targets are to a large extent activity-based, and it's more number-driven. For example, it's around measuring the number of reports or the number of structured bilateral mechanisms and high-level visits that's then conducted. Now, although some of these indicators includes the outcomes of the activities performed, to a large extent, these are mainly commitments. So what we are then recommending to the department is there needs to be a consideration for shifting from a quantity-focused indicators and targets to incorporate more outcome and impact-focused indicators and targets. This will then assist the department in being able to monitor, measure, and adequately communicate the impact it has in accordance with its MTSF targets. We also, through our audit process, we wanted to look at, in terms of the MTSF 5-year targets, how has the portfolio fared in terms of, are they on track with those targets? And here we had a struggle in terms of not being able to receive information to determine if those targets would then be achieved. This is an area that we will then be following up as part of our next audit cycle to make that determination if DIRCO is then on track to deliver on what it set as its MTSF targets. Now, reflecting on ARF did not achieve on its plan indicators. And this is to a large extent driven by the fact that ARF's targets are mainly response-driven in terms of the requests that it receives for assistance or funding from the various requesters. We can then move over to slide number 8. And this basically deals with governance and stability in the portfolio. Now, coming from the previous year's feedback that was provided to the portfolio committee, I think everyone is aware that DIRCO was largely impacted in terms of the ceiling that was placed in terms of their compensation of employee budget by National Treasury. And this resulted in some of the critical positions being delayed from the appointments being made. This was also a matter we raised and highlighted to the committee in our prior year communication. Now, when we reflect in terms of the vacancies at year end, we found that there was approximately around 283 vacant positions, of which 228 were at a supervisory level and 55 were at senior management level. Now, those did include some key positions, which included the DDG of the global governance, as well as the chief director in terms of strategic planning, monitoring, and evaluation. Now, through our discussions and our ongoing engagements with the leadership team at DIRCO, we are aware that they are in the process of filling some of these critical positions. And we did highlight earlier that the CFO position was then filled with effect from 1st of April. Now, in terms of the overall vacancy rate, we found that the vacancy rate as at year end was 18.7%, as compared to the prior year of 16%. And we also then noted an increase in terms of vacancies in the finance section, which increased from 25% to 26.8%. The other important factor for us to highlight as part of our messaging around the vacancies is with these types of high vacancy rates, it does impact on the well-being of staff who carry the additional workload, and that has an impact from a wellness perspective of the staff. Now, due to the high number of vacancies in both the supervisory and senior management roles, this then is a contributing root cause in terms of the quality of the information supporting the annual performance report, as well as adherence to the applicable laws and regulations. Now, I have already spoken about the quality of the financial statements, but just to highlight that when it comes to financial statements at DIRCO has struggled over the last number of years by ensuring that credible reports are then produced and submitted for audit. Now, with the improved control environment, which included detailed reviews and strong oversight provided by those charged with governance, this then ensured that DIRCO was able to submit financial statements free from material misstatements. And this comes also as part of actioning in terms of our previous recommendations that was given to the department. We can then move over to the next slide. Now, I did highlight when I spoke about the overall outcomes that DIRCO continues to find a challenge in terms of ensuring there's adherence to the procurement and contract management's prescripts. And to a large extent, this happens mainly at missions where prescripts are not always followed in the procurement processes. And we did find that there's similar matters being reported year on year. This included then minimum quotations not being obtained, which then results in irregular expenditure being incurred. To a large extent, this was due to financial and SCM prescripts not being consistently applied due to a lack of understanding on the concept by staff at missions. Now, when we reflect in terms of what has the department done in respect of this, we did note that there has been a concerted effort by the executive leadership team of DIRCO which included then the introduction of a clean administration action plan. There was also a compliance checklist that was brought in as part of the processes from a procurement perspective. What we are finding is that those compliance checklists are not always completed, or it is incorrectly completed, which then results in non-compliance not being timeously identified, and then there being irregular expenditure. One of the other challenges that we did observe, and it's not a common issue, it's an issue that we've identified previously, is that when transferred officials deployments at missions end and the new appointments are not then timeously being made, there leaves a vacancy in terms of critical positions on missions that are then filled by acting staff that are already at missions. Now, this is a frequent occurrence and it needs some attention, as those acting officials may then not have the necessary financial skills or compliance skills to ensure that there's compliance being maintained at missions. Now, in respect of that, the accounting officer, we did recommend to him that there needs to be regular assessments performed to ensure that the personnel at the missions possess the right skills and competencies to ensure compliance with the prescripts. And in instances where persons are then called to act in respect of, for instance, the corporate service manager positions, then it needs to be ensured that these officials have the necessary experience, and this must be addressed then as part of the audit findings action plan. One of the new non-compliance matters identified in the current year related to the procurement of goods and services valued at above R1 million that were procured through a quotation process and not through tender processes as required by the prescripts. This was to a large extent due to the misalignment between the department's thresholds in the delegation of authority, as well as the compared to the thresholds as prescribed by National Treasury. Now, this has resulted in a significant increase in the irregular expenditure incurred and reported, and I will provide further context as we move into the next part. Slide number 10. Now, from an expenditure management and irregular, fruitless, and wasteful, ARF is commended for not incurring any irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure over the past 2 years. Now, we remain concerned that there is a notable increase in the levels of irregular expenditure at DIRTCO, where for the current year, there was irregular incurred of around 1.4 billion, and the revised prior year irregular is 976 million. Now, I did indicate that the issue around the difference in thresholds on DIRTCO's delegation of authority versus the National Treasury instruction note did to a large extent contribute to this large increase. Now, when we reflect in terms of the closing balances of the irregular expenditure, DIRTCO has closing balance of irregular of 3.4 billion, of which 2.7 billion has not been dealt with, and that no consequence management processes have then taken effect. We did note that in respect of this, investigations have commenced post-year end to ensure those matters are properly investigated, and then as per the recommendations, the consequence management processes can then flow. Now, when it comes to fruitless and wasteful expenditure, we did identify 7.4 million of fruitless and wasteful expenditure in the current year as compared to the 4.3 million from the prior year. Now, unpacking the reasons for this fruitless and wasteful expenditure, to a large extent, is mainly due to vacant residential accommodations at missions abroad, which includes one chancery. And this is indicative that leases are not being efficiently managed and is an area that needs strengthening of controls. Now, from a closing balance of fruitless and wasteful expenditure, DIRTCO has a balance of 38 million, and all of this have not been investigated by year end. Investigations have commenced, however, post year end and is at an advanced stage. Now, when it comes to the control environment around compliance, management needs to enhance the controls related to compliance with laws and regulations by identifying common instances in the department that leads to these non-compliance and develop mitigation strategies to prevent these instances from occurring. Now, from a best practice perspective, ARF is able to get the compliance correct. So definitely there could be some learnings between ARF and DIRTCO so that there's proper compliance monitoring and oversight, and there is adherence to laws and regulations within the portfolio. Now, when we reflect in terms of revenue management, this is a repeat issue that was identified in the prior as well, where effective and appropriate steps are not taken to collect all monies due to the department. And to a large extent, this relates to the rental deposit refunds that comes from missions abroad, where you pay an advance rental at the commencement of the lease, and on termination, you should get those refunds back. Due to the inadequate controls, including the lack of reconciliations of this rental deposit account, we did find that approximately 15 million had to be written off due to the monies not being collected and it not being cost effective to follow a legal process to recover. We can then move over to the next slide, slide 10. Now, this, as I mentioned, was a repeat issue. We did see some action being taken in respect of the action plan. However, due to the effects of the inadequacy of controls in prior year, the matter has still not been fully addressed. And in terms of strengthening of controls, there needs to be an overall strengthening of controls so that all monies due to DIRCO, which includes the rental deposits, are then timeously collected. Now, from a financial health perspective, we did not identify any going concern uncertainties at both DIRCO and ARF, but we did note certain unfavorable indicators for DIRCO. Now, you would note that the compensation of employees has been a continuous issue for DIRCO. And although we are seeing a reduction in terms of the irregular expenditure relating to this, this has then resulted in a growing overdraft in respect of the Paymaster General account, which has significantly increased from the prior years due to the accumulated overspending on the cost of employee. Now, in terms of looking at the reduction in irregular expenditure relating to this specific matter, to a large extent, the reduction can be attributable to DIRCO not filling then the vacant positions in an effort to maintain the cost of employment within the budget, as well as then the adjustment budget for the cost of living adjustments by National Treasury. Now, when we looked at DIRCO's efforts to reduce the shortfall on the cost of employment, which included the revising of the organizational structure, that effort is then noted. And in addition to this, one of the other targeted actions by DIRCO was around the closing of missions. And this had been anticipated as having a impact in terms of reduction of the cost of employment, but due to the fluctuating exchange rates, the envisaged savings have not always then materialized. Now, reflecting on material irregularities, we did not identify any material irregularities within the portfolio for the 2022-23 financial year. We can then move over to the next slide, which is slide number 12. And this slide basically reflects in terms of the IT environment at DIRCO, where we do highlight that DIRCO continues to use the old IT infrastructure due to the ongoing delays in the implementation of the IT modernization project to replace the old and obsolete infrastructure. Now, these delays can be attributed to the budget constraints, as well as then delaying in terms of vacancies of key positions within the IT environment. One of those positions includes then the IT security management. And in an environment where cyber attacks are quite prevalent, this is a critical position that needs to be filled with a suitably qualified official. Now, DIRCO continues to use the old expired IT contract that has been extended multiple times since the initial expiration date. And a new appointment has also been made in terms of a new service provider. They are currently in a handover process between the old service provider and then the new service provider. Now, just to reflect in terms of that old contract, we did find that contract to be irregular in previous years, and there were issues in terms of the valuation and awarding process. Irregular expenditure on the contract as at 31 March amounted to total of 569 million, of which 133 million was incurred in the 2022-2023 year. In terms of payment to the new service provider, there was a payment made for an amount of 193 million in the current year. Now, although management has made some progress in terms of enhancing the IT control environment as committed to in the previous year, a number of deficiencies we previously reported continue to exist within the IT environment. We can then move over to the next slide, slide 13. Now, in respect of those deficiencies that were then identified, those remain critical in terms of minimizing the associated technology as well as business continuity risks for ensuring an improved IT environment. And most of these deficiencies are anticipated to be then rectified upon full implementation of the modernization project that's scheduled to be finalized by March 2024. Now, we do on slide 13 also reflect in terms of some of the issues we've identified as part of our mission visits. We physically visited 10 missions in the 2022-2023 year, and we did identify in respect of some of those deficiencies. It included some officials at some of the missions not being fully aware and fully understanding in terms of the backup process. We did find some issues regarding the backup controls not being entirely adequate, where backups are stored on site, some in the same server room where the backup procedures happen, and there being no proper logs or registers to show the frequency of the backups. We also noted at some missions that there were dilapidated hardware being used, and this results then in slow operations or the inability to perform certain functions at missions. Now, in New York, for instance, we did find the server room in a state of dilapidation, where there's an open ceiling, there's damp ceiling, as well as exposed cabling from the ceiling and exposed wiring on the floors. Now, at the bottom of the slide, we do reflect on a matter we have previously reported on in terms of the financial assistance to Cuba by the African Renaissance Fund. Now, there was that court case relating to the 50 million that was earmarked to be provided to DIRCO. Now, in respect of the litigation procedures, we do note that the heads of argument were filed and a hearing on the merits took place on 15 May 2023. Judgment has still been reserved in respect of that. We then get into slide 14, and I'm close to the end of the slides that I will cover. Just to recap in respect of some of the root causes that I did highlight as I went through the slides, we did note that there was ineffective oversight over DIRCO compliance to ensure that there was no repeat non-compliance matters. We did find at both DIRCO as ARF, there's inadequate reviews of the annual performance reports to ensure that the performance information submitted to audit were free from material misstatements. We also highlight as part of the root causes that there's incorrect interpretation of supply chain management prescripts in respect of the thresholds that applies at mission levels. We also noted that the action plans implemented did not adequately address previously reported deficiencies as well as instances of non-compliance to ensure that they were not repeated. We also note in respect of consequence management, it was not fully implemented in prior years, and there were steps taken to implement in 2023. And from a corporate service management perspective, we do note that they need to have formal finance training and experience, which is not always the case. And as they are tasked with the day-to-day running of missions, which amongst others include managing of the finances and ensuring compliance, this is an a target area that needs focused attention. Now, our recommendations to the DG, as well as the Accounting Authority of the African Renaissance Fund, included continuation with the investigations of the remaining irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure, ensuring that there's action taken in respect of the outcomes of those investigation reports. I did highlight from our post-audit feedback from the department, we did note that those investigations are in progress and it is at an advanced state. We also recommended that there needs to be an enhanced oversight role on compliance with key legislation applicable to DIRCO, and there needs to be corrective action for non-compliance, especially where there's repeat offenders. There needs to be necessary action taken against officials who do not fulfill their roles and responsibilities, and this will drive an environment of zero tolerance for non-compliance. We did highlight as part of our feedback to the department that there needs to be consultations with National Treasury regarding the thresholds to be applied to the missions, together with reviewing and aligning DIRCO's policies and delegations in line with the Treasury prescripts. We do note that subsequent to our audit being signed off, there were engagements with National Treasury, and DIRCO has also received some approvals for some of the exemptions requested for. From our annual performance report, there needs to be enhanced reviews of the performance report and ensure that the oversight role is effective before submission for audit purposes. There needs to be a review of the policy of posting of officials abroad, as key officials need to have the skills to carry out the day-to-day financial tasks of the mission, as well as ensure there's compliance. Now, from a Deputy Director Generals for the various divisions, they need to assist the accounting officer by working close with the heads of missions, as well as the corporate service managers, to ensure that they determine what the real root causes are for repeat findings at missions, and ensure that in terms of the action plan, these are then focused on in terms of what needs to be addressed. This will then have a positive contribution in terms of DIRCO's action plan for 2023-2024. Now, I did mention that the action plan must be root cause focused, and it must be regularly assessed for effectiveness in terms of addressing the findings being identified. From an IT perspective, there needs to be close monitoring regarding the implementation of the IT infrastructure and modernization project. Moving over to slide 15, and this is the last slide I'll be presenting on. To the executive authority, the minister, we did recommend that there needs to be follow-up with the accounting officer to ensure that the recommendations we have made are closely monitored and implemented so that the portfolio can then achieve clean administration. To you, Honorable Chairperson, and to your members of this portfolio committee, we are then recommending that there be monitoring and regular follow-ups with the minister, as well as the DG and the executive leadership team of DIRCO, on the progress of the audit action plans put in place by the department, as well as the ARF, to improve for DIRCO and to sustain for ARF the audit outcomes. there needs to be monitoring regarding the progress on consequence management, and there needs to be close monitoring in respect of the implementation of the IT infrastructure modernization project. Chairperson, I am not going to go through the slides that follow because my summary in terms of the overall message is a summary of all of the slide pack up until slide 34. So I can then pause here and then we can take questions. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Naika, for the comprehensive presentation. Honorable members, there's the presentation. We can now engage the presentation from Mrs. Naika. It's just a request from my side, Mrs. Naika, on page 6. Can you hear me, Mrs. Naika?
Yes, Chairperson, I can.
Yes, on page 6, I will request that when we talk about the importance of the missions in initiating, assisting business-to-business interactions as part of growing South Africa's economic agenda, we must say tourism and other critical economic sectors. It's just a request. Honorable Ngozi. Honorable Ngozi.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. And I welcome the input from the AG. I just have several comments, but maybe one question. The first question is, when you say that the targets are quantity-oriented and lacks in-depth detail on impact, my question is DECO capable of developing such capacity? Because it looks like it's a multi-sectoral capacity that is required, which may not necessarily reside in DECO, but it's in other departments. Chairperson has referred to tourism, there's foreign direct investment, there's agriculture, and like, will that not be too much to expect from DECO? Secondly, to address this, shouldn't DECO return to its collaboration and interaction with affected departments or area competencies to ensure that they are able to assess impact? Otherwise, you are going to make DECO very big, and it may not necessarily have the capacity to do what you are requesting. I also, Chair, note that the issues around IT and its impact, fortunately, in our visit to Germany and Portugal, we discovered the impact of the lack of progress on interfacing between the new and the old, which is called modernization, and the impact on processes. It's notable, and that's just a comment that your experiences are our experiences with regard to these two missions, although you undertook several missions yourselves. I also, Chair, want to check on something we also discovered, that if you do not fill vacancies, staff admissions tend to overlap or assume responsibilities for which they don't have competence. That has an impact on the quality of service rendered in those offices. I think we did observed that in Germany, for example, a person multitasks between being a receptionist, processing people who apply for visas, dispatching the visas, and others who are moved from being drivers and chauffeurs, chauffeurs, to undertake administrative responsibilities. Lastly, Chair, I do take the request for us to continuously monitor, okay, last but not least, to continuously monitor the modernization process in terms of IT. I just want to ask the AG, with regards to this process, how long is in terms of your experiences as AG, how long do other comparable departments take to manage the transitions from one service provider to other in the IT environment, and what lessons can be learned for DECO? The other concern here it's around this issue of the incurrence of this. I think it said this year it will be, no, in the reporting period it was 113 million or 133 million. I just can't see it in my slides. I think by the end of the financial year, or by the end of this financial reporting year, that amount will be just under $1 billion. If you take into consideration prior expenditure on this, and under $1 billion, it's going to be too much. And what can be done really to address this issue? Otherwise, Chairperson, these are my comments. The next questions will be directed to the department. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nkosi. Honorable Chetty.
Good morning, Slala. How are you? And good morning to the members and the Ages Department. Yeah, Chair, as I said previously when this matter was raised, and the department is said to have an unqualified audit finding, but with matters of emphasis on supply chain matters. And I've said it, we must not overtly celebrate this, because we must caution the fact that in real terms, DECO is still battling with the issues. With the youth property portfolio abroad and getting the required codes as per slide, I think it was 9. Now, Chair, just a concern I'm raising, because it's raised in the AG report and we've raised it before. You are well aware, and the committee as well, that we've just approved the upgrades at our missions abroad. And most of these are going to be above the 1 million ceiling. So my question is, I'm hoping that the department takes stringent note of this, instead of just getting normal code where we needed 3 codes, as opposed to just sending it out and not sending it on the tender with the 3 codes, giving us the excuses around the fact that it is difficult to get those codes. You remember that's what happened to us at the embassy in Germany with our deliberations. The other concern I have, Chairperson, is around slide 9 and competence. It has been raised already by the Honorable Nkosi. And you're aware, Chair, that this is an issue that's been happening for the last 3 to 4 years, I would say. Even the former member, who's now the Deputy Minister, Swartz, always raised the issue around this. And I think it'll be a disservice to her if I don't reiterate the fact that the committee has raised this every single time we sat with the department, and there is no attempt to want to improve on this, based on the fact that there is a security of tenure for those officials who go abroad as ambassadors and then come back to a position that's still kept for them. And that's the primary issue we have there, where the position of vacancy rate is high just for a secure of employment between the ambassadors appointment abroad and when they return. Chair, the other concern I have was, again, raised previously, and it's still coming up, is the issue of, and I think that was on slide 10, the rental deposits. And Chairperson, 2 years ago, we raised this issue when the incident happened in Los Angeles. And we asked for officials to sign acknowledgement of debt. So if and when they leave those premises and we as DIRCO cannot regain our rental deposits, that the officials, because it's not you or me or anybody else here that goes and damage the property that these officials abroad are living at, as either them or their family that causes breakages and leave the place in a, let's just say, an unsavory manner, that the landlords do not want to reimburse us our deposits. So there must be, because we talk about it, Chairperson, and we speak about consequence management, but there's nothing real that is being implemented. So telling us again about, and this is no offense to the agent office, they're just telling us what we've been telling the department at our meetings, what they should be doing, and they haven't implemented it to date. So I do not want the agent office to take offense to what we are saying. It's just that what you have raised in your report here, most of it, consequence management, the issue around the rentals, including the issue around the 1 million rand securing of 3 coats, which they just totally ignore because they get it out for their own friends or their own beneficiaries. The issue, Chair, around item slide 12 and the ICT. And Chair, I think I'm also want the luxury, because I want to extend this similar to Honorable Nkosi, to the officials in their presentation. The AG reports said that there was 569 million rand worth of fruitless and irregular expenses under the ICT because of the old BT tender. Mrs. Kumari went, Mrs. Naidu, sorry, went further, went further to state, ma'am, my apologies, went further to state that 133 million for BT, the old contract, was for the current 2022-23. And then she added a very important statement. And she said, I quote, and 193 million rand to the new contractor for the 2023 year. Now, Chairperson, I think you and I both know that the department and the Deputy Minister misled us at our last meeting, because we were told in no uncertain terms that there is no fruitless and wasteful expenditure on the payments for the old contractor in the current year, because we were not paying both the contractors. And here we are now led by the AG's report to say that both the contractors have received finances from our department in this current 2022-2023 year. And this, Chair, I'm just raising now because the only I want from the AG is just to confirm that those two amounts were the correct amounts, but the explanation will come from the department and not the AG. And lastly, Chairperson, around the slide which deals with the dilapidated and obsolete, on the dilapidated building in New York. Again, Chair, I'm going to let this go to the department, but I just want to confirm from the AG's office that the New York office where the IT was stored was dilapidated and with ceiling boards damaged and everything else. Because, Chairperson, again, the department must answer to us where they misled us to say to us that moving to this new premises in New York was the best possible accommodation available for our embassy. Thank you, Chairperson. I'm done, Chair.
Okay, Honorable Chati. Thank you very much. Honorable Mpanza.
Good morning, Chair, and the committee. Chair, I'm covered with most of the inputs that have been made by the colleagues before me, but let me just welcome the presentation from Mrs. Naker, coming from the AG office, and also appreciate the fact that they have come up with very comprehensive audit outcomes. Knowing that the Department of International Relations and Cooperation is not an ordinary or a department that is dealing with normal issues because of the nature of the issues that the department is dealing with, particularly when you look at the issue of the fluctuations or the foreign exchanges in terms of currencies, and also that it's dealing with quite a number of missions, plus minus 114 missions globally. So it's a very sophisticated environment and complicated, but they have been able to come up with this very comprehensive outcomes and clear recommendations to all of us, including the Portfolio Committee, which we appreciate very much. Chair, I will just add, and also noting the fact that the department has achieved this unqualified audit with matters of emphasis after receiving year-on-year qualified because of recurring audit queries that was identified by the AG office. So we appreciate that there's also a movement and improvement in the department, but I think there's a lot more to be done as the audit team has identified those areas. My chair would be to ask, maybe it's going to the department, that how far is it with filling the critical and the scarce skills positions? Because without the human resource capacity, whether it's ICT, whether it's property management, it will be difficult for the department to actually respond or address the issues that the AG is identified as challenges for the department. So I want to know, I appreciate the fact that the position of the DG was filled on a permanent basis, and also the CFO is filled on a permanent basis, but there are also quite a number of critical posts that still needs to be filled. And also, Chair, to check how far the issue of the restructuring of the department it's going. Because when you talk about the issue of property management, as the Foreign Act Service Act now has empowered the department, or the properties are now handed over to DECO, that unit is very also critical, and it should be capacitated with more qualified and more experienced personnel. So I just want to check what is the department has done in that regard, so that at least the issues that have been raised by AG are addressed. I can say, Chair, that to add on the issue of the ICT and the modernization process, I think I should just raise a concern that it seems as if that process is not moving with the speed that it should be moving. Honorable Mkos has highlighted the issue of the not the synergization of the IT processes, which we discovered when we did our oversight a trip to Portugal and Germany. And in Germany, we saw in that office, there were a lot of people. It was crowded because visas are still done manually. When we were told, when we engaged with the department, that no, everything now is sorted out in the machines. So the modernization process is actually moving with speed when it comes to issues of ICT. So I think the department needs to do more on that one, because it's really not sending a good image about the country. When you will find that some machines are still so backward when technology is so advanced. We are now living in the fourth industrial revolution, but we're still doing things of the first and second industrial revolution. So it's not very good. So, Chair, that would be my addition to what other colleagues have raised. Thanks very much, Chairperson.
Thanks, Ntate Mbanza. Well, from my side, it's just two things, really. One is just an emphasis on this thing of servicing two service providers at the same time, because it doesn't make logical sense why, when we knew that a certain contract is going to end at some point, and we knew that a new contractor was going to be coming in, it does look like there were no necessary internal preparations to ensure that the transition between the new and the old doesn't impact financially on the department negatively, and therefore the audit outcomes. The second thing is just for the department to, the signals around irregular, fruitless, wasteful expenditure. I hope there will be a program that will indicate how each one of them is going to be dealt, such that the graphs begin to point downwards. Because currently the graphs are pointing worryingly in the opposite direction. There's a slight increase. So I just hope that the department will indicate to the committee on how each one of those worrisome trends is going to be thwarted going forward. Those are the only two things from my side. We'll now give Mrs. Naika and your team the opportunity to deal with matters raised.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and the Honorable members, for the questions. I am going to take them, and I will then be augmented by my team who can come in and add. Chairperson, we do take your initial comment regarding us reflecting in terms of, in addition to the tourism, to reflect also on the other critical sectors. So we do take that in terms of updating the content on that specific part. Honorable Nkosi, in terms of your question around DIRCO's targets being more focused in terms of measuring the quantities versus the impact, and whether DIRCO then has the capacity to do this. In terms of this particular matter, we have, as part of our 2022-2023 year, we did do a proactive review of the 23-24 annual performance report of the department, and we did already, as part of that process, already give this indication to the accounting officer regarding the indicators and the targets should have then, and a more outcome and impact focus direction. I think what would be important for the department is not only to then continue with the engagements with ourselves as the audit team, but to also have then further engagements with the Department of Planning and Monitoring and Evaluation, as they then also have a similar focus in respect of the work that they do. So I think this will then be a collaborative effort to ensure then there's a more tangible link in terms of the MTSF targets versus what DIRCO sets out on their annual performance report, as well as to ensure that all of the actions that's then driven by DIRCO then does have an impact on the citizens. The comments around the IT and the visit to Germany, as well as I think it was Portugal that was mentioned. I think that was just a comment, so we do take that comment. There was also that comment regarding the filling of vacancies and specifically around mission staff where they then play dual roles. We also take that comment as well. And there was another comment from member Nkosi regarding how long does it take to move from one service provider to another. So this is it would be dependent in terms of what is the full extent of the project in order, and I think perhaps what the department could do to ensure that in terms of this handover process, it's properly managed, it's properly monitored, and it does then happen according to the set timelines. Perhaps the department can consider engaging, for instance, CETA, because they would have then the more broader experience in terms of timeframes for a project of this nature, and then they can monitor in terms of what CETA then considers a reasonable timeframe, whether the timeframes that have been agreed to in respect of these projects are aligned to that from a reasonable perspective in terms of how long does it take. We do take note in terms of the comment by member Nkosi regarding the concern that by the end of 2024, the irregular in respect of the all IT contract could be just under $1 billion. That is a concern. I think it's a concern for everyone. In terms of what the department can do to minimize, I think it's here again, it comes to our recommendations in terms of there needs to be that close monitoring in respect of this handover period to ensure it's properly managed, it's being done according to the agreed timeframe so that there is no then further extension of this irregular contract. Moving on to the commentary from member Chetty. We do take note in terms of the concerns regarding the property portfolio abroad that has been high on the priority list of the portfolio committee. We also take note about the concerns regarding the upgrades at the missions abroad and for DIRCO to ensure that in terms of those upgrades that the procurement prescripts are then followed in line with the direction given by National Treasury in respect of those processes. I think Member Chetty also then mentioned that the issue that we've raised around the competency of mission staff is not a new matter. It's been a matter that also has been raised as a concern together with the issue around the vacancy. So we do take note of that. We also take note in terms of the rental deposits that the committee has also been proactive in terms of making certain recommendations in terms of an acknowledgement of debt. You would see in terms of our content on slide 10, we also include that as part of our recommendations to deal with that. And of course, it is important that when there's these failures in terms of ensuring there's proper controls and processes, which then results in write-offs of monies due to DIRCO, that there's proper consequence management in respect of those failures. with regards to the comment around the payments to the old IT service provider, yes, there was 133 million paid out in the current year, and there was 193 million paid out to the new service provider. What is important to note that we did not identify any fruitless and wasteful expenditure. In terms of the handover processes, what you would then find, and we do highlight that on slide number 12, you would find that both service providers are not working in the same region in terms of the handover process. You would get, for instance, the old service provider working on the Africa region, while the new may be working on the Americas and Europe. So from a duplication of effort, we did not identify any, and there was no fruitless and wasteful expenditure disclosed by the department regarding that. And just to clarify, the 569 is irregular. In respect of our content on slide 13, Member Chetty also requested us to confirm in terms of the...
Sorry to disturb you, my sister.
Yes, Chairperson?
I just want to check if I'm hearing you correct, that from an auditing point of view, there will be no problem in a contract of a service provider ending, appointing a new service provider, and then somehow extend the contract of the previous service provider. I'm done.
Okay. Chairperson, I do see a hand from Member Chetty.
Oh, so sorry. Thank you for alerting me of the hand, Mrs. Sniker. Thanks for your alertness. Honorable Chetty.
Yeah, no, Slalo, you beat me to that. I just put my hand up and you asked the very same thing I wanted clarity on, because we were told differently, and I'd also like to hear the clarity. Thank you, Slalo.
Okay, Ms. Sniker, proceed.
Thank you, Chairperson. So from an audit perspective, what we did look at, and you would remember that we have previously made that determination of the old contract as being irregular. So that was irregular from day one of the award, where there was issues regarding the awarding process and the process that was then followed. That contract continues to be irregular. Now, when we look at the new contract, we have not identified issues on the new contract. Now, when you assess now the old provider together with the new provider, what is important to understand is that in terms of the work that is being done, it's being done in terms of specific areas where, as the new infrastructure is then rolled out, you would see then the new service provider coming in and the old service provider moving out. And there is no duplication of effort in terms of both of those service provider undertaking the same work in the same region at the same time. So we do not have any fruitless and wasteful expenditure identified in terms of the handover process that's being undertaken by both the old and new. If there was a duplication of effort in terms of both doing the same work at the same region, it would have then triggered the fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So I'm hoping that then clarifies the issue in terms of there being no duplication of work within the same of both service provider in terms of the work that's being done. And I think it's also important to understand in terms of the magnitude of this IT project, it wasn't a project where the old provider could switch off and the new one could then switch on immediately, which is why then the need for the handover process. I'm hoping that clarifies our member Chetty as well as your follow-up chairperson in terms of that question on there. In terms of
Yes, Mrs. Naka, it clarifies it, but it doesn't make sense. That's just my feeling. We'll discuss that with the department again.
Chair, if I may?
Honorable Chetty.
Yeah, Chair, same, but I just want to add one more. We understand that when a new service provider comes in, there has to be a transition period for one to hand over to the other. But surely this cannot be an indefinite handover period, which is what we're currently experiencing, which is in excess of 18 months. So as much as you say that there's no duplication of payments, and remember your initial comment as well is that from inception, the first contract was irregular and illegal. So any payments made on that should always be irregular and illegal. But I just also want to find out from you, ma'am, I'm sure that there should be an end date to the handover, because currently the issue we are having as well, as we are incurring this irregular expenses because there seems to be an indefinite handover period. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Member Chetty, for that follow-up. I'm going to allow my team and Mr. Sibua can then provide the details regarding the end date for this handover contract.
Thank you, Kumar. And morning to the chair and all the members. When it comes to the contract that we are talking about right now, what we looked at for the year that has just passed is that the communication relating to the handover period was for 12 months, which from an assessment of the nature and the magnitude of the contract, we regarded that as reasonable. So what we looked at for the year that we just looked at right now is that for the coming year of 23-24, we are not expecting additional payments or additional services from the new service provider, because this contract that we're talking about for the new service provider started in August 2022. So by August 2023, we're expecting that the handover period is completed. And when we're jumping in then to the new audit period, we're not expecting to be seeing the new services together with the new payments. Thank you.
And thank you, Sibua, for that additional insight in respect of that matter. Member Chetty, I'm hoping
Mrs.
that...
Naka?
Yes, Chairperson?
Sorry, this is my last thing on this contract thing. I'm going to suggest that the AG should bring to the attention of the auditees, in this instance, the executive side, that when initial contracts are entered into, there must be in the contract a clear indication as to how the transitional period is going to be handled at the end, so that it is in the contract from the outset, so that we who hold the executive accountable, we can hold the executive accountable based on the contract itself, not what they discover when the contract comes to an end, and a realization that there will be an exposure on the side of the department from providing a service, because from the beginning, there was no clean tightening of how the new is going to replace the old in terms of transition, how that is going to be managed. I think if we're going to allow the entire government to have that lacuna, for me, it's a big, big risk, not only for the department, but also for the taxpayer. because the money that comes from the taxpayer has to be used prudently. It means in our thinking from the outset, we have to always keep in mind. Now, it looks like the department stumbled into the reality that there's now a new service provider and we must have a transitional period, 6 months, 12 months. It might become 18 months and so on. So from a risk management point of view, I think that advice should come from the auditor to the auditee. That's just a comment, Mrs. Tucker. Thank you very much. You can proceed.
Thank you, Chairperson. And going forward, we will then also, as part of our engagement with the accounting officer and the executive leadership team, also then follow up in respect of that and ensure, as part of then the new service provider contract, whether it's then fit for purpose in terms of that transitional period and how that will then work. Thank you. Member Mpanza, you did indicate in terms of the outcomes that, and yes, we do acknowledge that DIRCO is a different environment, and there are then the complexities that comes with the missions, its exposure to the foreign currency fluctuation. So we are aligned in respect of those remarks. I think there was a question in terms of the vacancies and the filling of the critical positions, and it is in terms of a concern. What we have as part of our discussions with the executive authority as well as with the accounting officer, what we then did as a recommendation is, in terms of those critical positions, there needs to be that assessment in terms of, are there then gaps in terms of the control environment, or are there then deficiencies being identified and reported in respect of those areas where those vacancies then exist? And in terms of a prioritizing of now which ones to fill and which ones can then be deferred to a later date, that those specific ones where there's those deficiencies or gaps in terms of the control environment, there be for those to be prioritized in terms of ensuring there's suitably qualified officials then appointed on that one. But I think in terms of progress being made, in terms of filling now vacancies at a holistic perspective, I think the department, in terms of their feedback to the committee, they will then give those details, as well as the comment by Member Mpanza in terms of how far the restructuring process is. And we do take note that as DIRCO then now undertakes now the additional responsibilities in terms of the property management, that unit is then properly capacitated to deal with all of those issues to ensure properties are then properly maintained and the upgrades and all of the expenditure relating to the properties are in line with the prescripts. I've already spoken regarding the ICT, so I'm hoping in terms of the comment by Member Mpanza that we then have dealt with that comment. Chairperson, according to my notes that I've captured, I think I've addressed all of the questions by both yourself as well as the members. But if I have missed something along the way, it would be appreciated if you can kindly indicate.
You were very meticulous and methodical in your responses, Mrs. Naka. And you showed a lot of maturity in how you dealt with the issues. I know somehow we spoke to you as if you are the department when you are the auditor. So, and how you nicely handle that, I think it shows a lot of maturity and ability to handle such matters on your side. I don't think there are any other members who wants to say anything. Keep up the good work. Continue flying the flag of South Africa through the Office of the Auditor-General of South Africa. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, thanks, Mrs. Naika. We will now proceed to the next item, internal audits. Who does the presentation?
Okay. Good morning, honorable members, honorable chair.
Lega Usayanda.
Kiteng, Chair, and how are you?
Nyapi.
Yeah, Pilabab. As
That's
I was
cool.
thank you so much for the opportunity. Let me greet all the honorable members of this portfolio committee, the DG of the department, and the officials from the department, the AG, one of the assurance providers, and lastly but not least, the members of the audit committee for DERCO. Chair, is it on the screen? Ayanda Mafulega is my name. I'm the chairperson of the audit committee. Chair, before I then get into the presentation, I would like to highlight two points, Chair. The first one being, let me just thank the chair of this committee for his indulgence. I had submitted a letter, humbly, requesting that round about 10 to 11, if I could be recused, just to attend to a matter. I need to apply for my UK visa, so the interview is today. Unfortunately, due to the not being so flexible to move this appointment, so really it is with utmost and greatest respect that if I could be afforded that opportunity when the time comes. However, Chair, we do have the deputy chair of the audit committee that will take up, that will pick up from where I would have left off, with the presentation. Then immediately after the interview, Chair, I will rejoin, the meeting. So really, I humble apologize on that end. Then the second one,
Yes,
Chair.
I was just saying, Usayanda, at the right time, you can depart. There's no problem.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated. And then lastly, Chair, as the committee, we just want to conquer and acknowledge, the contents of the AG report that has been presented, or the presentation by Mrs. Kumari Naika. The AG, is a standing invitee to the meetings of all the audit committees. So Chair, having said that, in our presentation, we will then just be emphatic on some of the matters or the issues that has been raised by the AG, because the context of the presentation, the committee, the audit committee is well, appraised of and familiar with, because it's formed part of the discussions on the audit issues that we play oversight on. Chair, having said that, because I'm also cognizant of the time, I don't want to be that much disruptive. I will humbly request the deputy chair, to come forth and then lead the presentation, so that there is no disruption when I have to, leave in the next 10 minutes. If the committee is fine with that, Mr. Perry Wheeler, you can then come forth and just take us through the presentation.
No problem.
Okay.
Yes, Nkokeli again.
It's again.
Chair, I am available. I'm in the United States at the moment, but alive and well and glad you take over. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, you can proceed with the presentation on behalf of the committee. The chair is rushing somewhere.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. My name is Barry Wheeler, and in the absence of the Chair present, I think I'm going to take us through the presentation that we've prepared for today. However, I do appreciate the members of the committee allowing me the opportunity to stand in for the Chair and to do the presentation, and welcome to everyone here today and all honourable members present. Chair, I'm going to start off immediately, and I'm not going to repeat a lot of what's already been said by the Auditor-General, but I think generally we've seen an improvement in the department in maintaining the audit opinion, and we do congratulate the department because a lot of hard work and effort has gone into regularizing items that were identified by the Auditor-General, and the achievement of an unqualified audit opinion with no material findings is actually moving things along in the right direction. However, we also got to take note that due to the nature and the uniqueness of the department and its operations and work and multi-functional nature, and its links with other key departments within the state as such, including defense, police, DTI, in terms of health, etc. All of these require a rather unique environment which has the capacity to be able to deal with a variety of issues, often simultaneously and effectively. I think given the internal governance functions which exist within the department, that has also gone a long way in assisting matters and improving issues. The previous assistant acting CFO has done extremely well in preparing for the 22-23 financial year and was subsequently appointed as CFO, which we also believe was the right thing to do, and we do believe that she has the capabilities to take the department to new levels of excellence. If I can move to slide number 3. Given the African Renaissance Fund, this has continued to obtain a clean audit now for 3 years, and we foresee this continuing going forward. Although the bill has been passed for the partnership agency, we do believe that given the factors which are at play at the moment, if that's a clean and easy transition, we do not see a change in the audit opinion. Again, we also need to understand that the performance information reporting still requires some further work and attention. And again, I need to just mention, Chair, that the type of reporting that we're seeing in the performance indicators follows very closely to that of DIRCO, where it's a predominantly numerically driven process of so many applications were received, they were all looked at, therefore 100%. Again, the issues relating to the impacts of the performance indicators are also important, and I also think it will be important that we understand that there's also a qualitative factor that is still somewhat lacking in the performance information. And I think the question that was already raised previously by the honourable members around whether DIRCO has the capability, I think the same point can be raised relative to ARF as well, as to whether ARF has the capability required to be able to adjust to these improved indicators of quality and impact. We also continue to provide oversight as such regarding the prior year's BRRR recommendations. And I think the report that's already been provided by the Auditor-General has given a very clear indication of where we are at this point in time with both the department and with the ARF. The one issue that I think we would like to see some movement on and progress is the ARF impact assessment report, which is now overdue. If we could proceed to the next slide, please, slide 4. When it comes to the financial statements and finance, there were errors that were noted. And as I mentioned, there was a lot of hard work put in by the finance division to be able to ensure the quality of the financial statements that were submitted for audit, and also to ensure that there were no material misstatements this time around. I think there's also an important factor here is that the enhancement of the review processes by finance themselves and also by internal audit has also assisted in identifying items timeously before the external audit is undertaken. The one area that still remains somewhat of a concern is the fixed assets through the department itself, where we are concerned still because of notable material findings that were raised previously by the Auditor-General. And we are concerned that there's a repeat finding on this again. However, there is 2 stock takes per year. One happens to be in August for the members' information, and that should be in the process of completion at the moment, with clarity in terms of which missions are still to be finalized, and to be able to get a proper guideline on what is available on the floor, what is in the assets registers of the missions, and what is in the financial records of the department itself. By year end, we have asked for a report as the audit committee on that process in the early part of the 4th quarter, which would be early next year. So we can monitor it from our perspective. And management is also encouraged to reinforce controls relating to the asset management within the department, so we do not have a repeat finding or any regression in the future. Often one finds generally, as far as audit committees are concerned and departments are concerned, is that once the assets have been finalized and rectified and there's no material findings, it's often one of the first areas that starts to regress, resulting in a poor audit outcome in a department or entity. If we can move on to the next item, and that's the supply chain management. Again, here we have the compliance issue. And I'm going to come back to that in a moment, because this, to me, is probably the central driving point of the department's difficulties and challenges. So the supply chain management needs to continue to improve, and the controls relative thereto, the reviews, the efforts that go into the bid evaluation committees, and also into the bid adjudication committees when it comes to tenders. An emerging risk was the lease commitments and prepayments relative to the lease properties that were spoken about earlier, incorrect calculations and commitments. And there have been controls that have been put in place during the current year to address this issue, so that we do not have a situation where we have to write off funds going forward. And hopefully that will address the issue. But I do not believe that we're in a situation at this point in time, from what we can see within the department, to say everything's fully addressed and we'll not have any minor problems going forward. So this is an area that still requires attention, honourable members. If I could move to the next slide. The audit action plan, although we've had this in place now for 2 years, I think we generally are still of the view that it's not as adequate and effective as what we'd like it to be because of the repeat findings, both by internal audit and also by external audit. We do believe that a little bit more effort and work needs to be done on the plan. We need to specifically ensure that, as was mentioned earlier by the Auditor-General's office, that we stick to the root causes and the common problems of why we are still finding difficulty in ensuring that there is compliance taking place and that the necessary people, timelines, and responsibilities and what needs to be done is clearly defined in the action plans going forward. The Director General did send out a letter, 7th of August 2023, to all staff, which it was a very well drafted and authored piece, which basically encouraged, I would say, the senior management and staff of the department to work together in achieving a clean audit going forward. And I think we can resonate with that very easily as both Audit Committee and as Portfolio Committee and as Auditor General and as the staff of the department in ensuring that this is achieved. I do believe that this specific area is one that the Director General is going to have to actually place a lot of emphasis on going forward. If we can move then to number 4, and the performance information. I've touched on this already, and I'm not going to go into further detail on it. It's just a question of ensuring that the programs and that the information and reliability of the data coming through make it very, very clear that the information supports what is being reported in performance reporting. And I'm fairly comfortable with that as this information flows through the risk management unit of the department as well, and is also reviewed by internal audit to ensure that there is alignment between what is reported in fact and what is supported by the evidence within the business units. The next slide. In terms of risk management, I also have the privilege, honourable members and chair, of being the chairperson of the Risk Management Committee. So I do believe I can speak to this issue with relative confidence. Within the risk framework and controls that the department has got in place, I do believe that across the board they are generally good, that they are practical, and with both mitigating actions and physical actions and processes, that it does address the key risks of the department. However, given that, there's always room for improvement. I think the lack of capacity within the risk management unit of the department is also having an impact on its ability to be able to identify and properly address risks in the short to medium term. There is pressure on the individuals concerned, and that is being felt. The other area I just wish to touch on to a certain extent is that a weak risk management function within a department or entity does create a problem in terms of the combined assurance which is provided by internal audit. There's a very clear example of that, and also risk management unit as a whole. Moving forward, I do believe that the recurring risks that the committee would like to bring to the attention of the portfolio committee are the following. One is the procurement deviations. There have been strict measures implemented, and also to deal with contract variations where necessary, and that's been included in the financial delegations of authority, and also expanded the power of the Director-General in this regard as well. Business continuity, although we do have an ICT disaster recovery plan that exists within the department and is tested not necessarily regularly, but occasionally, there is still a need for a departmental business continuity plan, of which the ICT disaster plan is just a portion of. So in other words, irrespective of the type of disaster which may affect either the head office or the missions, wherever they may be, whether it be flooding, whether it be war, as we've recently seen in the past year, whether this be a disaster of some type. Again, this was raised when we were briefly in Cuba and also in Brazil. Civil disobedience, which has occurred in both countries to a certain extent, and staff at the embassies both raised this issue about what happens if I can put it that way. And that's really the point of a departmental business continuity plan. How do we ensure that we continue conducting the functions with the necessary excellence they need to be conducted without having to put anything aside should any disaster occur? And who knows who or what needs to be done under each different type of scenario? So a business continuity plan does need to be implemented and developed. We can move to the next slide. Internal audit. Again, this unit somewhat surprised me on a personal basis. Was given the difficulty in making appointments during the past year, it has nevertheless succeeded in continuing its task, again under difficult circumstances, and the audit plan, which was approved, has basically been carried out almost in full, and we must also give recognition to internal audit chair for the efforts that they've put in ensuring that the task and the controls and the reviews that were planned have in fact been done. One of the areas which is of concern, which links into what was raised previously by the honourable members, was the capacity within internal audit to adequately deal with information technology as well from an audit perspective. There are still positions which are in the processes of being filled, and within the next month or two, we should be almost back to full strength again. I think we also need to take into account that the chief audit executive is also a member of the audit committee as such, and also attends most of the risk management committee meetings that also take place. And as I said, it's been successful despite challenges in executing its approved plan. I also need to mention that the internal audit findings are being taken very seriously by management, and that let me put it this way, the value of internal audit, I think within the department itself, is now being realized. Another point I'd like to raise is that the capacity constraints in the specialist environment, and specifically ICT, as I mentioned, may result in the internal audit department needing to arrive at an arrangement where we have a panel of experts which could be called upon to assist them with the internal audit when and as required during the course of the year. Next slide. We've heard of the irregular expenditure. We've heard of the fact that this has been growing. We've also been informed that there's been certain write-offs that needed to take place during the year. However, I'm of the view with all due respect, honourable members, that this specific area can only be the single most difficult, challenging area for the department to overcome at this point in time. I'm also of the view that if we can overcome this barrier and this challenge within the department of compliance with legislation, a lot of the other factors and findings will, in fact, be resolved as well. And I'd very much like to put it to the Portfolio Committee that it's a challenge which most departments are facing currently. I also believe that it's extremely important for us to clear the backlog and properly investigate the causes of this irregular expenditure and to recover whatever we can recover, but at the same time to identify where the shortcomings were in terms of root cause, and also to ensure that we now at a point where we can clearly indicate that this is the common cause and address those issues directly. However, I'm also of the view that we can only do this through what I would call a four-pronged process. The first one is that the ethics strategy that was approved August last year, 2022, and fully updated and aligned with the public service ethics strategy, also with the presidential strategy, and also with best practice, which includes the whole issue of what are the key ethics within the department, how do we go about developing them, and also to do the standard of living assessments that are called for within the public service legislation. That still has to be put in place in the department at this point in time. It's in progress. But the number one thing I think needs to be the implementation of the ethics strategy and ethics plan by the department. The second area here which needs to be addressed is that officials need to fully take responsibility for their functions and their work, and to ensure, especially with the cutback of staff, given the cost of employment allocation by Treasury, resulting in vacant posts still being available within DIRCO, staff need to work and fully carry out their functions to the best of their ability, and also to ensure that they're adequately trained to be able to undertake those tasks, and then to move towards a level of mastery of those tasks. I believe that will help a great deal in dealing with the compliance with legislation as well. The third one is the review. There needs to be adequate review carried out by top and senior management of the work which is flowing through and the quality of the work which is flowing through. So often we're still seeing things slipping up and slipping through, and the level of review needs to be improved. I believe that's another factor that needs to be considered in regard to this matter. The other area which needs to be looked at is to ensure that there's adequate identification of improvements that can be made in control at the operational level within the organization. And if there is adequate consequence management going with that, I do believe that we can overcome this problem, which has been clear for years now within the Auditor-General's report of the department of compliance with legislation. So it's got to be a multi-tasked approach to deal with this issue. If I could move to the next slide. The whole issue of the non-accountability for compliance, we're not seeing a sort of a shared approach and collective on this. And I think this exposes the department to several non-compliance issues, as I've mentioned. The other area that we need to deal with is, as soon as non-compliance is identified, or irregular expenditure is identified, it's got to be reported immediately. It's got to be taken care of and dealt with immediately. It cannot be allowed to lie there and just fester away until somebody decides to do something about it. So we do suggest that branches and business units should have a dedicated source to assist management in coordinating all non-compliance requirements. There are some departments I am aware of, such as Defence, where they actually created a compliance directorate for the department as a whole. However, we do believe with the unique nature of the work within DIRCO that it may need to be more specific to branch or business unit because of the extent of the silos between branches and units which do exist within DIRCO. The next slide. I think there's some still gaps in the effectiveness of the ICT steering committee. The issues that we've been dealing with today and earlier this morning, Honourable Chair, I think are issues which ICT have got to get to grips with. And then their strategy and their identification of risks and also the controls which need to be in place to avoid cybersecurity issues, the backups we touched on earlier this morning. The backups, in my view, should take place at each hub on a regular basis. There is truth in what has been said in the Auditor-General's report, both in Brazil and Cuba. The question, Brazil happens to be one of the hubs. We raised the question of whether the backups were being made, how they were produced, whether there were recoveries tested at times. And I'm afraid we got a bit of a shrug of the shoulders and uncertainty, again, as indicated by the AG, as to who is doing what. Another area, I think, is the ICT project governance. The management, implementation, and controls need to be tightened as well. I think the biggest risk which is currently facing ICT at the moment tends to be the issue regarding risk to hacking and cybersecurity issues. Also, the proper and adequate maintenance of access to various functionality, including part of the programming, patching, etc., within the program itself. If we could move to the next slide. I think we've touched on the BT contract, and I'm not going to make further mention of that, Honourable Chair. Also, the findings which were identified, there are long-term issues which are still outstanding relating to infrastructure, and I think we are not being unrealistic in saying this project is delayed and is still somewhat delayed. When we went to Brazil, we identified there that the new equipment in the hubs is not yet in. We thought that that had been finalized and was in the process of being put into place for the Americas. Another area that we touched on that troubled me to some extent here was the very simplistic day-to-day type of password controls, giving people access to certain programs, etc., which still need to be tightened up further within the IT environment. Next slide. I think here there's been quite a big impact, Chair, with the property management. I think we're seeing a lot of work being done in that regard. There's now prioritization for various missions, for chanceries, also the embassies themselves. There's been a deterioration, I think we can accept, over at least the last 10 to 15 years worldwide. It's not just something we picked up in Europe, but this is extensive. A new risk, which I think has also developed just recently, has been the Pan-African Parliament issue, where we're going to have to start looking at the key risks involved there as an emerging risk. But generally speaking, I've got to feel there is now better control over both the leases, the property management which is occurring, and at least we're seeing the start of the maintenance of properties that we own abroad. And I hope and trust that the issue of fixed property, as far as we are concerned overseas, will now be taken care of in an improved, better way than what has been the case in the past. Chair, I thank you and the honourable members of the committee for receiving this report and would appreciate it if it may be accepted. And also my comments that I added to that, they come from the bottom of my heart, and I also feel that the key issue here is let's deal with this compliance issue within the department. That will solve the majority of the problems. Thank you very much on behalf of myself and my colleagues on the Audit Committee, Chair. Appreciate it, and I'm happy to take questions, and so would my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair Wheeler. Thanks very much for that presentation. Very enlightening. Members, there's the presentation. Can we raise issues if there are any comments or questions? It looks like members agree with everything that you have said on behalf of your committee, Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. It's appreciated.
It was, yes, it is well received, positively, well articulated. And I think all of us have learned from the presentation. Whilst me saying that, there's only one hand, which is Honorable Nkosi.
Chair, I also welcome this presentation. I didn't indicate so with the AG's presentation. I do welcome both. Chair, my question I only have one question. In the past, where audit risk has indicated that senior managers do not take responsibility for their divisions and do not attend structured meetings. Is this still the case, or has it changed? Thanks. Otherwise, I'm happy with the presentation.
Thank you kindly, Chair.
Yes.
I'll answer that.
Mr. Wheeler, that was the only issue.
Hello?
Mr. Wheeler.
Chair, I'm here. Sorry, I'm in the USA, so
yes,
I'm getting a little bit of a
proceed,
lag.
Yeah, that's the.
Can I proceed? Thank you, Chair. In terms of the taking responsibility for the units, let me put it this way. You need advice and you need guidance, I think, as a committee in terms of the situation on the ground. I don't believe that the situation is so serious that one can say that senior officials do not wish to take responsibility for the units. I think I'd like to refine that and say there appears within DIRCO to be a lack of willingness to take action in addressing issues relative to the individuals who are not doing the right thing, who are not complying with legislation, and to adequately investigate it and timely investigate it, to ensure that the irregular expenditure which results from that can be recovered before an individual leaves the department, or at least be able to bring about some form of discipline, whether it be training, whether it be a letter of warning, whether it be a discussion to improve performance on the part of the individual. But that willingness does appear not to be as strong as what it should be, and to the extent that it is in certain other departments. I think the DG has already started to address that issue by the formation of the disciplinary committee, which is newly introduced, which I understand is chaired by an outside party. I think that the process is almost finalized to do that, but I think it's a step in the right direction to change the discipline of staff internally. Because there's no doubt in my mind that if we can get over the barrier of the non-compliance, that's going to require the joint contribution and also the commitment of all within the senior leadership of DIRCO to state we are going to go for a clean audit. To achieve a clean audit, we cannot continue with the non-compliance. Therefore, we have to action it. The people who are responsible for that actioning are in the day-to-day operational processes of the department. And you cannot break away from that, being a senior official in a department and not take responsibility for that function of ensuring that there is compliance. Whether it requires additional reviews by yourself of the work flowing through the work stream, or whether it requires additional control points that need to be put in place, it needs to be done. Because as I said earlier, to me, this is the sole barrier. If this barrier is overcome by the DG and his leadership team, there's little doubt in my mind whatsoever that the other issues regarding irregular expenditure, fruitless and wasteful expenditure, lack of review, lack of standard, you will actually see the achievement of excellence through the personal mastery that people are bringing about, through their own work, by being more aware of what's happening in their divisions, of the weaknesses that exist, of the strengths that are there. I do believe that would probably be the golden key, as it were, to succeed and then obtain a clean audit. That's my view, Chair, but I don't think there's a lack of responsibility on part of all officials. It may exist here or there, but generally I think there's a tremendous talent of people within DIRCO that I've met and come across. And what it does need is a culture change within DIRCO and a commitment of all to all swim up the same stream in the same direction to achieve the goals of the department. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Nkosi. It's a very valuable question you raised. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barry, for that, and also give our thanks to the entire committee and the chair for the manner in which, for the manner in which you are handling the matters between yourselves and the department, and the extent to which you take us on board as the portfolio committee. Since we came in 2019 until today, our term is about to end. There hasn't been issues between ourselves and your committee as a collective.
Thank you, Chair. And I think it's also the same from our side. As long as I've been part of this audit committee, we have worked well with the portfolio committee. And I do believe the portfolio committee does make a difference in driving and striving to ensure that DIRCO does reach the level that it used to be at as the best department within government. Thank you kindly, Chair.
Thank you very much, Barry. Enjoy your America.
Thank you kindly, Chair.
Okay. Honorable members, just before we close the meeting, we will now remain only on the platform with the DG. I did speak to the DG. There's a request from Honorable Chetty that we only remain with the DG. So I have ascended to that request by Honorable Chetty. Just before you go, the entire department, this thing which was raised by myself from the beginning of the meeting around the fact that the department shouldn't necessarily be in this engagement on the audit outcomes. And if they are present, they shouldn't say anything. I must say categorically here that doesn't come from us, because I checked with the DG. It doesn't come from the committee, DG. And I welcome the fact that you as a department, you inquired with Lubabalo, and Lubabalo, based on what he says is precedence and history, he said to you without talking to me or the committee that no, you when you are here, you don't have to say anything, and there's no need for the political heads to be here. So I want to confirm it that that's not the decision of the committee. That's precedence which Mr. Lubabalo referred to, and it's not our decision as the committee. It will be better if you are here and you can be allowed a chance to say anything. You see, like now there's a request from a member of the committee that as the DG you must remain, so that some matters can be raised with you, and then you can clarify them. This request comes as a consequence of this, what we are told is precedence in history, which we can't change, that you can be present but not say anything, or you shouldn't be present at all, particularly the political heads. But we will correct it going forward, DG. We are now at a point where we'll give Honorable Chetty. I hope everybody else is off the platform. Honorable Chetty, over to you.
See, there's 41 participants, so I'll just wait until they all leave, if you don't mind.
But the staff of the committee there's no problem with them.
No problem, Chair. No problem with them. It's just the others. I'm just waiting for the AG's office. They seem to be
the
grouping
AG's
up one at a
office.
time.
Thank you very much. You are now excused from the meeting and the audit committee. So we'll now remain with the members and the staff of the Portfolio Committee on International Relations. Thank you very much. Bye.
Can I proceed, Chair?
Yes, proceed, Honorable Chet.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the indulgence. Chair, I'm raising this, and like I said again, I want to appreciate the fact that you've allowed us the indulgence to address the DG. Chair, this is a concern that was raised previously as well when we had an issue with former ambassadors. And this is pertaining to the incident that happened in Japan. The DG was well aware of it. I mean, this hit the press. There were 3 meetings that we held during the course of that. And I still believe that the DG should have taken the committee into his confidence in informing us about the incident that happened with the ambassador of Japan's wife and the housemaid as such. It is disturbing, Chairperson, that as members asking us for comments on these matters, and yet the department themselves do not tell us about it. Chair, we cannot have and behave in this mentality that we are all equal, but some more equal than others. We've raised issues around ambassadors, and the image that they portray abroad has an impact on us as South Africa on an international stage. Surely, the DG should have had the decency of taking us as a committee into confidence about what has happened. More so, Chairperson, with the allegations that there has been an attempt to, via financial inducements, to get the complainant to withdraw any of the charges that you wanted to lay. It's embarrassing for us, Chairperson, because right now we can't be having, and this is why, Chair, we raised the issue around the training for our ambassadors and the fact that including their family members, because when they are abroad, they are representing us as South Africa. And we cannot have this type of incidents occurring. And for the department trying to brush this under the carpet, thinking it's not going to come out. Similarly, Chair, we've requested the issue around those members of the BEC and the BAC to be submitted to us as a committee. It's 3 weeks later. That hasn't been sent to us as well. So, Chair, I just wanted the judges to find out whether the DG can appraise us as to why there was a reason to have kept the committee in the dark about this issue. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Honorable Chachi. DG, just before you respond, and maybe I must apologize to the members. Regarding this matter of Japan, when it came out, I did write a letter to the minister that some clarity must be given to the portfolio committee so that we can also not have just the details and the knowledge, but we can also assist in clarifying the matter at a public level. So we have written a letter to the minister to that effect. It's my fault. I should have informed members as soon as I wrote that letter that indeed that letter has been written. So I apologize for that, members. DG, over to you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, honorable members. I don't think there was a deliberate attempt not to inform the committee, and perhaps we should have done that in whatever way, either through a briefing like this. But just maybe to get to the facts of the matter is that I was notified by people within civil society and some legal people. I immediately dispatched a team to investigate what was going on. By the time that our staff got to Japan, the household staff had left for South Africa already. She couldn't be interviewed in Japan. So we interviewed the ambassador and his wife about the circumstances of the incident, which was an alleged assault. On the return, we interviewed the household staff member on what approaches she wanted to take with this, because the facts of the matter is that she alleged assault by the wife of the ambassador. They all stayed in the same house. We asked whether she wanted to press charges. We should have to press charges in Japan. At that stage, she said no, she wanted to engage in some form of settlement. The settlement is not between us and the department, it's between the staff member of the house, which is directly employed by the ambassador. Subsequent to the initial letter of settlement that they wanted, the staff member informed our labor relations people that naturally she doesn't want to pursue that approach anymore. She wanted I think it was more financial compensation from the ambassador, and also to delete clauses to the effect that she can still pursue other legal options if she so chooses. We have subsequently, as a department, left that to her and her legal team to pursue, because she has all the rights to press charges if she wants to. I do understand that they're still proceeding with an attempt to settle based on a higher amount. But this is something that we are now leaving, because we have a contract with the ambassador. We don't have a contract with the ambassador's wife. But still, I think the issue of the image of the department as a whole is one that we need to look at. The platform that we're on is perhaps not the correct platform to have an in-depth discussion on this, Chair, because I'm not sure how public this is, but just to let you know that this is something that it's an assault case that arises from 3 people living in one house. We felt that the staff member has all the right to press charges. Those charges will have to be pressed in Japan, and then the merits of the assault case can then be tested. We, as the department, have under no circumstances sought to ensure that the staff member of the ambassador does not have recourse to any rights she has, given the fact that she says she was assaulted by the ambassador's wife. So I'm not sure how much further we can go into this here, but I think what we can do is perhaps have a meeting in person, or we can write it, and then we can also go into a lot more detail if necessary.
Okay, thanks for that clarity, DG. If it was the ambassador who had done the assault, it will be a different story. Is this a relative?
Yeah, it's close friends of the ambassador and his family.
Okay. No, I think it suffices. Honorable Chetty, as a person who raised the matter, does that suffices?
Yeah, Chair. I respect the sensitivity around the issue, but again, like I said, it doesn't absolve the DG and them from the responsibility of taking the committee into confidence, because we are the committee. We just dealt with the AG's report, and everything that we had raised as a committee is what the AG had raised in their report. And if somebody from the outside listened to it, they would thought us as a committee were incompetent of doing our job, even though it was what we raised, that the AG raised. I'm saying this, Chairperson, because similar to here, we exercise oversight on the department as well. Now, by keeping it quiet, the DG wasn't doing him or the department any favors, because all of this does come out. And when it comes out, we as members of parliament, especially those of us on the committee, are expected to comment and portray a view that shows South Africa in good standing. It's very easy for us to want to go and throw anybody under the bus. But if we are taken into confidence, we also can, like you said, give a defense or a comment in the interest of it. But in the absence of that, we will say what we need to say, because this is an international matter now. And as the DG said, and here we must also be responsible enough, even though this may not be the platform according to the DG, that everyone matters. Surely we know for a fact that the victim will not be in a position to fly to Japan to go and lay the charge. So I have much reservation, but I will hold back. And yes, either we have a written form as to what is it that the DG wants to say to us, or an in-person one. But I believe, Chairperson, that these are the simple things that need to be addressed. And we may not have a contract with the ambassador, but surely, Chairperson, this action by his wife has an impact on South Africa on an international scale. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thanks, Honorable Chetty. Can I ask Honorable Chetty that the other matter that you raised, that we deal with it on Wednesday? Because you are right. It means as a committee, we will have to also just write something to the department and say there was this deadline regarding the adjudication committee, which it was a decision in the meeting. Then we get the response on Wednesday.
Agree,
it's not
Chair.
far. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, honorable members. Thank you very much, DG, for your flexibility, because we basically hijacked you into having to deal with matters where you were not, there was no prior warning. But thanks for respecting the request and giving the members that clarity. Otherwise, thank you very much, honorable members. If I'm not wrong, there's a sitting this afternoon, those who are going to the sitting physically. If not, we will meet next week on Thursday. Is there any announcements, Rubabal? Okay, it doesn't look like we've announcement.
No, Chairperson, there are no announcements, Chair, except that we're still waiting for confirmation on whether the committee will sit on Wednesday or Thursday. Thank you, Chair.
Next week, yeah.
Not will be issued today or as soon as we get the response, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, honorable members. This is how we come to the end of the meeting today. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Chair.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair.
Eta. Eta.
Hey, Chair. But
Eta.
it's fine. No, I wanted Tulubala to confirm, is there any sitting today or not? Because we haven't received any links.
Eh, Babalu, you call this sitting, what are you?
Chairperson?
You sitting in corner, right?
I didn't check, Chair, but I can check and inform members, Chair.
Okay, Gulungi.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, President.
Sure, sir.
Sure.